before I continue, I want to ask Phil, did you know Mr. J. Paul Parise at also?
Of course. When I found out about it early this morning, Louis Nanny called me to tell me I was like in shock. I talked to JP about 10 days ago, and I kept in touch. I had talked to him about a month ago, then 10 days ago, and he told me that he was stopping the medication. This is about a month and a half, 2 months ago. He said, I'm through with all that chemo stuff and everything else. He said, if I go, I go. And I said, JP, doesn't it make you feel better? He said, Phil, it makes me sicker. And I feel terrible when I take it. He said, so when I go, I go, and I'm going to try to enjoy myself as much and hard as I can and as long as I can. And when I heard that this morning, I was in shock. I was stunned, actually. I was like, what? Oh, what? Oh, I didn't know what to say to Louis, and because JP and I got to be really close on Team Canada 72, really close. And ever since that time, I just really, really liked the guy a lot as a personal friend. And if it wasn't for him, my grandson would have never gone to Shattuck. He would have probably gone to a school in the East, Boston area, and because I had a lot of contacts there. But JP was the one that got me up there. I went up to Shattuck, talked to JP about it. He showed me the area, and I'm telling you, my grandson fell in love with that area and that whole school and the whole thing. And JP started that hockey program there. And a lot of people don't know he recruited guys like Crosby and Malone and Taves, Jonathan Taves, and a lot of these guys went to that school, and it was like a hockey factory, and it still is. JP was something. I can tell you guys a funny story. Remember Campella, the referee, in '72?
Joseph Campella from West Germany.
After when JP almost was going to swing at him, and hit him with the stick, and he got thrown out of the game. I guess it was the next day, we flew to Czechoslovakia to play in Prague against the Slovaks, the Czechoslovakian team, the whole team, because of Stan Mikita. We went over there. And you know those little cherry tomatoes that you get on a salad on an airplane? Well, it was on the plane. And I don't know whether I started it or JP started it, but we started to throw tomatoes, those little tomatoes at this guy. And JP says, I want to go up there and stick that tomato right down his throat. And we stopped him from doing it. We had been drinking all night, too, so it wasn't like...
There's a shocker.
Well, we won, you know. We'd forgotten that we had to go play this stupid game in Czechoslovakia. But I'll tell you, I'll never forget that. And then the 40th anniversary...
But I met him, Phil. He was a very nice man.
Oh,
he had a great demeanor about him. He was
great sense of humor.
Man.
Great sense of humor, man. A real good...
And the players loved him. He was like a great guy in the dressing room. He's just a really nice man.
I can't believe it. I really can't. I just talked to him, it seems, like 10 days ago. Oh, well.
Where was the cancer, Phil, or is that...
he had lung cancer.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. And,
now, Phil,
it was
a Boston...
4 when they found out.
Yeah, that's too bad. He was a Boston Bruin who was traded to the Leafs and I think taken in expansion by Minnesota. Is that the correct?
No, taken in expansion by the Long Island.
Was it Long Island? Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You know, Phil, I never remembered Paul Parise as anything but a Minnesota North Star. That's what I remember him as.
Right. But I can tell you this, Bill Torrey will tell you, he scored one of the most significant goals ever in the history of the Islanders when they beat the Rangers in overtime and knocked the Rangers out of the playoffs. I don't know what year it was, but and JP scored the overtime goal, and it might have been in the second overtime. And,
well, he was a quality player, right, Phil? He was up.
I'm just saying, guys. I know he played for Boston. I know he played for the Islanders, but for me, like anytime I heard his name, it always reminded me of the Minnesota North Stars.
Yeah, and that's where he was, and that's where he ended up, and that's where he ended up living, and and everything else. And that's where he started the program at Shattuck. And so JP had a full life and a good one, and he's going to be missed, man. I can tell you the truth. He's going to be missed.
I was very lucky to meet him, and he reminded me of Jean Beliveau, that very, that kind of very nice, unassuming, very giving human being. And
I remember after
NHL.
the game in Montreal when we got killed in '72, and Harry Sinden said, "I'm going to put you and JP with you and Cash." And the second game, I said, "Terrific," because Cash was a hard-working guy in the corners. JP was the same type of guy, relentless. And of course, I was the shooter. That's the way it was.
He wasn't that tall. He's 5'10".
No. That's about 5'10", maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe 5'10". When we went over,
he wasn't like you're over 6 feet. What are you, 6'2", 6 feet, Phil?
I was 6'1.5". I was at the time. Now I'm like 6'1.5". You shrink, and then I had my discs taken out, so I shrunk even more. But I remember when we went over for the 40th anniversary in 2012 to Russia. Jeep and I flew over together with our wives, and we flew over, and him and I, we sat, and we let the girls sit together, and JP and I sat together, and we drank wine, and we laughed. And we laughed so hard, because we all flew first class. It was wonderful. And the Russians paid for everything, by the way. Everything.
Well, did you fly Aeroflot or Air Canada?
We flew Aeroflot.
Because if you'd flown Air Canada, Aggie would have been up there with you.
Jesus, that's right. He probably would have been. Yeah, you're right.
Fantastic.
Fantastic, baby. Fantastic. Yeah, JP was a great guy, a real good guy.